Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guest is Rogier Vijverberg, founder of SuperHeroes and the new mixed reality agency called Jimmy. Rogier, what a pleasure to see you. I'm looking forward to our conversation on some pretty scintillating topics, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, look, before we talk about SuperHeroes and Jimmy, I hope you don't mind, but I always think it's fun to set things up, and perhaps we can start somewhat philosophically. What is your perspective on current trends in advertising and how creativity is defined today?
That's a big question.
Well, I'm expecting a big
A
answer.
super easy question to start with. No, I think it's super exciting times for advertising, and there's really multiple ways of looking at it because it's hard to miss, of course, AI these days, and the impact that it's going to have on our industry, but also the impact that it has on culture, on ideas, on behavior of people, on skill sets. And I feel that there's so many ways of looking at it. It can be terrible. When you look at advertising, it can be that everything is going to be the same, that every idea is going to be rolling out in the same way, basically a little bit like programmatic killed itself. I feel sometimes, too much, too many ways of saying the same thing and not being interesting anymore. Or it could be great because it's going to ignite this need for brands to really stand out from what is that sea of sameness. And I'm an optimist. I love a bit of a challenge, and I personally am super energized by it.
Oh, that's interesting, and I have to confess, I asked you that as a first question because your agency is fascinating. You started SuperHeroes in Amsterdam in 2009 with a mission to save the world from boring advertising. Now,
Yeah.
it's 15 years later, you're still an independent agency, but now you have offices in New York, in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and most recently you added Singapore. And it's all driven by that same mission. So talk about what fuels that drive.
Yeah, well, it's of course quite an ambitious mission to save the world from boring advertising. So basically, one of our drives is that we're not done yet. So we know that there's ads everywhere. We know that there's an audience that's really doing its best to avoid advertising. We know that there's solutions also for it, but it also takes some time, and we need to get like more following, of course, as well. So basically, what we've been doing is we've been seeing how far we can stretch that mission, and it started in Europe, like from the start, from the get-go. We've been a super international agency. Our team has many nationalities. And our work became really international from it. Like we started in Europe, got famous in Asia. In Asia, they started to ask us to move to also go to the US and help them there because it was easier for them to talk to us in their time zones sometimes maybe as well. So basically one thing followed on another. And yeah, we've always been super like creativity and culture driven. And I think that's still, adding up all these different cultures, adding up all these different locations, as being like just a super challenge all the time. And we're certainly not done yet.
Well, with such an ambitious mission, why don't you explain a little bit about what you do? Because I think that people who haven't seen it may not realize just how breakthrough it is. So you've already started talking about some of your clients and the range of clients. Just give us a couple of examples.
Yeah, so it might be interesting to know to go a little bit back in time because like when we started in 2009, the world looked so differently. I think we started off. So I have a digital background originally. I was responsible for the Heineken global work, and we were making work that for a long time, we didn't buy any media for, so we just made work that we knew people were going to talk and write about. And we basically brought their thinking into SuperHeroes as well. We wanted to make sure that our ads were not like standard ads. So in the beginning, we worked a lot with video. We started making virals. Those virals were very successful. We did a couple that were also pretty famous here in the US, like Surreal It's Scary with an elevator where the floor fell out. And we had a whole bunch more where we were getting a lot of attention for. And then what happened is brands started to notice it, started to ask us to do more integrated campaigns as well. And what we realized and saw was that our work was actually not just, super fun. Audiences were responding to it, but it was actually also really effective as well, because people got it. And why people got it was not necessarily because we were super explicit in our messaging, but they understood the human connection to it. So I think something that really is a clear indicator of what we do is in our work, we really look for like really unites us as human beings. So we're not necessarily always looking for something that is really super local culture, but much more something which is on an emotional level really connecting us. And I think that is really what we have started doing in every in lots of different ways with our clients over the years, and why we are where we are right now, which is like in New York.
When you opened, you said something interesting as you talked about AI. You talked about how it's affecting the industry, but it's also affecting culture, and it's
Yeah,
affecting behavior and ideas and skill sets. I think
yeah,
that's interesting, because that really has a different perspective than just talking about technology. And one of the things that your work resonates tremendously with popular culture, or maybe it doesn't only resonate, it's based very much in popular culture. Do you want to just
mhm.
expand on that a little bit, if I'm indeed on the right track?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what we do is, so we're focusing on younger generations, so digital natives, and we know that they spend most of their time online. And what we're really looking at is what's really keeping them occupied. Like, what is that? What is it that they are passionate about? Who are the people that they are talking to? Like, who are the conversations, the people that they notice? And then what we do is we look at what is the place of a brand in that in their world. How can we as a agency and as a brand add something that is of value to them? And of value means that it's entertaining, or maybe they learn something from it, or maybe it's sometimes something that they can actually play with. But what is the role of a brand in that mix? And I think for us, that is if you look at culture and how that influences us, I think that is our most important starting point. If you then look at like what is the role of AI in that, that's of a different perspective. That doesn't have so much of that human connection, of course. So for us, it's not so much about what's AI going to do for advertising, but it's more like what is AI going to add on improving that relationship of an audience with a brand. Uh, is there a relevant role in it? Can it come up with fun ideas that are going to engage people? Uh, Totally fine. But most likely, AI is going to influence creators, going to help them make stuff, going to help our partners and collaborators to make work that is maybe never seen before, or has like a really special element to it. So yeah, if you look at AI, if you look at culture, I think ultimately it's the human connection that is most important for us.
Let's continue with culture for a second, and
Hmm.
and the new, and what's
Yeah.
possible. Um, you've just started a new agency called Jimmy, and
Yeah.
you've also talked about how digital street art is really the next frontier for brands.
Yeah.
Can you talk about why you started that agency specifically, and also maybe share or describe some of the extraordinary installations, if I can call them installations, that you've done through Jimmy? So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the great things of this day and age is that tools that were normally only available to Hollywood level VFX studios are now in the hands of young creators that are making stuff in their bedrooms and in their living rooms that are incredible. And what we noticed, so we work with Lenovo, for instance, that's one of our clients. And 3D is a domain that they were very passionate about because, you know, it's where a Windows-based machine is really excelling. So we started working with a couple of these creators and found that they are like amazing in their skill sets. They are really clever when it comes down to marketing a product in a way that it really feels authentic. And it's just amazing content that stops people scrolling, stops people's thumbs when they are scrolling. So we were looking at this and we were looking like we basically were talking to all of the best ones around the world, and they're actually based in Australia and India, in the UK, in France, in the US, in Canada. And we thought like nobody's really uniting these people. Nobody's really bringing them together. So that's basically what we did. We started a collective, first of all, with the aim of making sure that they got to know each other a little bit better. And then we started thinking about, hey, actually, you know, why not bring this collective also to the marketing world? Because it is really, really exciting what is happening here. Yeah, we feel that. So if you really look at it, it's a really young domain as well. So there's still so much to explore, and that's something that we can inspire as well. So yeah, that was the reason for starting Jimmy. Um, by the way, a question that we often get is, so we call it digital street art. But there's not really a clear name for this category yet. So some people call it CGI-ads. Some people call it faux-out-of-home. We call it digital street art because we feel there's also an art aspect connected to it, and it's not fake, it's just digital. You know, advertising might in itself already, you know, you can argue if advertising is real or not. So it's a bit of a question, like what is the right name of it? But what it does, it adds special effects to video that are basically all hand shot. There's been a couple of really popular examples recently with the Maybelline ad and there's been an ad like recently with L'Oreal as well, with some other Parisian stuff, and you see it popping up more and more. So that's basically what we do. It doesn't live in real life. It only lives in on social, on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube, and maybe other platforms that follow.
I thought the Maybelline ad, the mascara, did exist in the London Underground.
Yeah, yeah,
Unless so that was the, you know, the lash, putting, you know, the mascara on the lash as the train went through. But you're
yeah,
saying that
yeah.
some of
No,
these exist in other realms. I know that Trafalgar Square in
yeah,
London has had a lot of extraordinary outdoor work, particularly for TV series, fantastical TV series and movies and so on, where it looks as
yeah,
though some of the art
yeah,
is jumping off of the billboard, and I think we've seen that in Hong Kong as well.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and Maybelline, there was quite a bit of discussion because it did seem real, and I know that out of home specialists were saying you cannot do this really because if it's not real, it's fake. If it's fake, it's not honest. But I don't think it was really intended well, it was intended, of course, to play on the medium, but in a way that really is, I think, something of a generation that is now, breaking rules and is finding other ways of grabbing attention. And this whole like discussion now of fake and real is super interesting, I think, because as said, in advertising, the reality, authenticity is always a big question, of course, of how to approach it. I think it's a new realm that we live in, that there is an opportunity to add a medium like this or a tool like this to the mix as well.
It makes me think a little bit about the metaverse as well. I mean, is that reality, or is that, also fake?
Yeah. No, I think the metaverse is I mean, if you get really philosophical, then everything is real. If it exists for you, it's real. That's and everything is culture. And I know from my studies in the past that is the thinking. But there is an important component in our digital street art, and that it's always in a real life setting. So it always needs to be filmed handheld with a phone, as if you could actually be the person that was standing there to observe it. And I think that is a big difference.
Now that is interesting, and I opened with a philosophical question, but I didn't think that we would be talking tremendously about philosophy, and what is real, which is fascinating. Let me ask you some questions that I was going to say might be more grounded in what's real, but then again, I'm starting to wonder now. I have two questions for you. Given your range of clients, you mentioned Lenovo, and I know you have a number of clients in the retail space, in the consumer brand space, and so on. What would you say, particularly with a younger generation now, what would you say that people want or expect from brands today? Is it really that memorable breakthrough experience, or is it something more?
It's a super good question. I think what is really important for brands is that they are listening very carefully, and that they are not just thinking about communicating about their product from their own perspective, but that they actually, I'm not sure if this is like a proper English expression, but there's like stepping in the shoes of the people that they are talking to. So that they really look at their role and where they stand in their audience's lives. And I think that's a super key element. And like the term of it is like audience first, and like whatever you call it, I guess. But I think that is a key element. And one of the ways that we look at advertising as well is advertising in itself is not interesting. Like nobody's really waiting to see advertising. Advertising can be enjoyable when it's done in a good way, when it's presented at the right moment, and when it's also maybe leading to something that is actually of value. So if you can do that as a brand, and then you can be successful, and then people will actually enjoy you as well. So what we are trying to do with our clients is really look at, how can we basically create some certain energy around the brand where advertising is actually enjoyed, as opposed to basically endured.
Yeah.
And the way that we do it is basically we look at like what are the conventions, we look at like what's happening in society. We have started another collective, basically. It's called the Robins. It's a collective of 40 Gen Zs that we talk to all the time. We test ideas with them. We get our insights from them to continually understand if ideas really are rooted in something that they actually are open to. and are interested in. And yeah, that's how we look at advertising.
Do you find that that desire or that ideal of brands putting themselves in other people's shoes, is that really generation specific, or should that be true for any potential client, or any potential customer?
Yeah, yeah, I think it goes for anyone, but it especially goes for younger generations, because they are so critical to like what is presented to them. They're much more engaged. They're much more committed to the world around them. So it's especially important than maybe other generations who've grown up differently. But yeah, I feel it sounds as to me it sounds like as completely logical to think like that. I wouldn't almost be able to do any different. I also know that for some brands it's a little bit more challenging because a product has features. The specifications also need to be brought forward. You're kind of like looking at a market and you're looking for points of differentiation with competitors, and then you find and identify that little spot of difference, and that's what you build on. But I think the bigger question should be like, does it really matter that differentiation from the competitors, or do you maybe need to look for something which is much stronger, and that is be like playing an important role for somebody, or standing out like on maybe not a product type of level, but maybe on a human level. And those are the little, yeah, that is what we are looking for. Like, what's the energy that we can build around a brand that makes managers proud to work for that brand, that makes salespeople on the road proud to talk about the brand, that makes mom and dad proud of their sons and daughters working with the brand. Like, what is it can we do to bring that pride and energy? And I mean, it's challenging. Like, it's not easy, maybe, but at least that's what we aim at.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense to me. Let me ask you something then, quite specifically. Who would be
Mhm.
your ideal client? Or when I say that, I wonder, because you do some things that many people might describe as brave. So is your ideal client someone, a CMO who's willing to take risks, or a brand that somehow resonates with popular culture, or could it be anybody?
Yeah, yeah. No, like we like brave people because we're superheroes. Uh, but we also come to the rescue um, in cases that it's maybe not always the case. So if you look at our client base, it's a mix of two types of clients. So on the one hand, we have brands that are really aiming at younger generations and really need to break through the clutter and speak the right language, and make sure that they stay in tune with what is happening. And those are always, they're already like the people that work there. They know what they're doing, and we can only elevate that. But we also come to the rescue of brands that are maybe a little bit more dusty, that have lost some touch with maybe younger generations. And we've been quite successful in really helping them really reconnect to these Gen Zs again as well. And I think Lenovo Yoga, we specifically work for, is an interesting example. If you see like what we've been doing in the past years, like really like with digital street art, like with the collaborations, with being always on, really looking for creating work that really stands out, is really resonating there in the numbers as well. So if you look at like awareness and consideration and sales, everything is growing, and it's just like because you can see it's a breath of fresh air that's basically blowing in the hallways of the brand, and that's infectious.
Well, I love I love how you remain true to your superhero mission and language, and how you fight for the brave, yet you look to rescue some. I mean, it's extraordinary. You've really just naturally done a wonderful job. Let me just ask you
Yeah.
something else, because you work with a lot of global brands, and you yourself have, over the last 15 years, become global. Um,
Mhm.
do you find that, you're in Singapore, you're in New York, you're in Amsterdam. Do you find
Yeah.
that, each region requires different work, or if you get it right, does the same work resonate everywhere? I'm just curious.
There's definitely regional differences, but I think in our approach, we've also learned that there are a lot of similarities as well. And for me, like coming to the USA, I've been here now 4 years. It's been interesting to see that. I mean, if you look at Oregon versus Iowa versus Florida versus New York, there's also like massive differences in cultural surroundings, or like how people grow up, or like the way that people look at the world. And to a certain extent, that's the same in Europe, where there's maybe different languages and different cultures, and in Asia as well. Uh, but our work has always been like not talking to, as I explained before, it's not been talking on a local culture level, but much more looking at like what is really uniting us. And if you look at that, then there's a really big global culture. So global culture nowadays is, of course, on the one hand fueled by what is happening in social media. So there's creators that go like everywhere. Um, it is also fueled by popular beliefs. So what people think and feel about certain topics. And then there's also the human level, like a love for family. Like we once created a campaign that was about a quite boring topic, like how strong the battery of a certain smartphone was. And we connected to the feeling of your battery almost being empty. It doesn't matter if you're from the Philippines or from the US. You'll understand that what you do is you start to talk really fast. So we got a speed rapper that was really popular on YouTube, and we put him in a real life situation, and we let him do his grocery list, and people got it because it's a universal, it's a universal insight. So so while there are differences, there's also a lot of similarities, and that's really what we are looking for.
Are there any topics that are taboo now, or topics that brands shouldn't touch on?
Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, the obvious ones. Um, I think it's also about being real. So we know greenwashing is not really clever. We know that we recently did research around AI, for instance. AI, Gen Z is not really in love with AI. They also see it as a big threat. So the use of AI for the sake of AI is not really appreciated. So it needs to make sense in the context. So yeah, I think for every brand and for every type of product, there's definitely areas that you need to be sensitive to, and especially listen very carefully before you go out, in understanding like why how people look at it, like and what's relevant for them.
So 15 years of the agency, now a footprint on each continent. You're in New York for 4 years. I won't even ask you about what lockdown was like.
Hmm.
And you've just started Jimmy. You've got, which is one type of collective with creators. You've got another collective with the Robins on Gen Z Insights. So what's next? What's next for you
Yeah,
and SuperHeroes and Jimmy and everything else?
yeah. No, we're doing super exciting things. Like so Jimmy's off to an amazing start. We just did really cool, like Puma and Fenty collaboration, and there's lots of like amazing stuff planned for the upcoming period. So that's going to be amazing. SuperHeroes itself is also off to a great start in the US as well. When I look at it, I'm also a bit impatient sometimes. So I think, like, why didn't we make a Super Bowl commercial yet? So because that's the type of work that we make. So, but that also comes from the fact that not a lot of people maybe know us yet. So and I think in 2022, like, we won all of our pitches. We have a super great. I think pitch consultants maybe see us as the agency to discover. I think we're really starting to make impact in the US. So I have a feeling that you're going to be hearing much more of us in the upcoming years.
Well, that sounds great to me, and I'd love to spend more time talking with you, whether it's about philosophy or something, grounded in reality. I do think you're
Yeah.
right. I think we're going to be hearing a lot more from you, and it's a pleasure. So thank you so much for talking to us now, and I look forward to continuing the conversations. The Internationalist focuses on the continual reinvention of marketing by highlighting inspirational marketers around the world and their ideas as they move the industry forward. Internationalist Marketing TV shares these perspectives through interviews and personal stories. Thanks so much for watching. If you find this kind of content helpful, please click like or subscribe. Again, thanks so much.